A woman named Viola Horton attended a rural church service at a Baptist congregation in rural Marion County, West Virginia, back on March 15th. Her sister-in-law was the reverend at the church and was celebrating her anniversary as the leader of that church. That gathering at that one church in West Virginia that one day is estimated to have infected 30% of the people who were in attendance. 5 people who attended that church celebration that one day were hospitalized by the end of the first week after that service. Ms. Viola Horton was dead within 2 weeks of that service, and she was the first person in West Virginia who is known to have died from coronavirus. Last month in Kentucky, health officials traced more than 30 coronavirus cases and 3 deaths, and community spread of the disease across multiple counties, including into a Kentucky meatpacking plant. They traced all of those cases back to a single church revival meeting in Hopkins County, Kentucky. In California right now, a single church service on Mother's Day is being blamed for new clusters of the virus in Lake County and Mendocino County, California. In Butte County, California right now, they're trying to track down 180 people who attended a congregate church service in person in defiance of the public health order in that state that prohibited such gatherings. Public health officials are trying to find everybody who went to that church service because they learned that at least one person at that service tested positive the day after that service. And so they're now trying to contact trace the whole congregation because at that event, it seems like they were all exposed. Last month, one of the first CDC formal reports, the first MMWR report tracing a large cluster of cases in Chicago, identified one church service on one day as one of the places where documented new infections took place. The new MMWR that just came out from CDC this week traces another cluster to a church in rural Arkansas where the pastor and his wife did not know that they were infected, but they were. And over the course of 1 week, they infected 38% of their congregation, and so far 3 people have died. I was also surprised to learn this today about what now counts as the worst outbreak in the country. The outbreak at the Navajo Nation, which spans parts of 3 different states, a little bit of Utah, also New Mexico and Arizona. The Arizona Republic did great work today teasing out of the data geographically specific information about that outbreak on the Navajo Nation to try to figure out not just how bad it is there, but how bad it is compared with other parts of the country. And what the Arizona Republic was able to find is that in the northern, particularly isolated part of the Navajo Nation, the number of cases per population in specific regions there is higher than even in the worst hit zip codes in New York City. And Navajo health officials also say that that worst hit region within Navajo Nation is where they think the Navajo Nation outbreak began. And they have traced the beginning of the Navajo Nation outbreak, which again is the worst one in the country. They have traced it back to a specific church revival meeting on a specific day in early March in the Navajo Nation. That's where they believe it took hold. And now, again, that is the worst outbreak in America, worse per capita than the hardest hit zip codes in New York City. So when the president today pounded his chest a little bit and announced that he will insist as president that all church services be held in person this weekend all over the country, and he will somehow magically override any state rule that would seek to prohibit that kind of a gathering. I mean, the president, knows what he's playing with in doing that. This has been an out loud, documented, upfront part of our experience of this epidemic from the very beginning. And no, the president does not have the power to overrule state public health rules and demand that all churches hold in-person services. But him trying to create the impression that he has that power will have some of that effect anyway. And so, we will see what the president has wrought for this weekend in America in the middle of the worst epidemic on earth. And then in, 3 weeks or so? In some places, if we're lucky, we'll be able to do the contact tracing for what happens this weekend. And once they've done the contact tracing, presumably we'll be able to give him all the credit he deserves for what will happen this weekend. Because we know what is going to happen at church services held in the open in congregate this weekend. We know what's going to happen because we're already living through it at a smaller scale. from earlier on in this epidemic in America, when the total number of cases in the community was smaller than it is right now. We already know what church services have done in terms of creating what turn into large clusters. In one case, which turns into what is now the largest outbreak in the country, the worst outbreak in the country.